Okay, let me just make sure I did this right. Yeah, we're live. Okay. So let's just let the day stop. Sink into your chairs. The usual routine. Take in the room around you. And just let your consciousness soften into this moment. Let yourself slow way down so you can really track the moment you're in. It's amazing how much more comfortable that is, isn't it? Such a simple thing, free of charge. You have access to it all day long. Yet someone always seems to have to tell us to do it. To stop speeding past the moment. To stop reaching outside of the moment. And just work with what's in front of you. So simple, so obvious, so rare. From this place, from this slowed down place, place your attention high in the body, forehead and crown, and begin to breathe. This breath is a part of the moment. Be aware of its quality. And as you watch the breath, begin to directly watch the mind. Become the watcher of the mind. Let go of your identification with the object of what you're looking at. And instead identify with the watcher, the one who is aware. Let this jump you right up to the top of the mountain, like we practiced last week. Pretty good, guys. Abide there. Stay there comfortably. let's talk a little bit. There is a shamanic teaching that on my path was always called responsibility. That was kind of the word that encapsulated that teaching. I don't really think it's the right word, to be honest. Responsibility kind of implies the ability to respond, and that's not what is actually meant when we use the word responsibility for that teaching. It's more about owning responsibility for something, owning responsibility for your manifestations. You know, I think probably the word that would be the most precise would be a word like culpability. But that word has a negative connotation, and there's nothing negative about this. Maybe accountability. But that's not quite right either. So we're going to say responsibility, but understand that when we say that, we're talking about culpability and accountability. We're talking about accepting responsibility for something. My teacher's teacher had a saying, which was, the cost of freedom is absolute responsibility, or total responsibility is what she said. And it's true, but it's deep. And I just thought we could flesh that out a little bit tonight. So when we talk about responsibility or accountability, you know, there are two main areas or two main angles from which it can be taught. One of them is the tritest one on the planet. It's been said to death. You know, it's what you read in that book, The Secret. It's, you know, what every single person grabbed onto in the early 2000s and was all excited about. But it's been around forever. And it's this idea that the things that are happening to you are usually being pulled to you by your expectations to some extent. You know, you're sharing lives with people who have their own expectations. So it's not as simple as all of this is just something I'm making up in the moment. It's not like that. It's more like your expectations of life create a palpable pull on the objects of the expectation. You create a pull on the web of life. And based on that pull, provided the necessary materials are available, life will start putting that together for you. And you'll just find that there are little synchronicities and things that happen that match that expectation. So the first aspect of responsibility is looking up and recognizing that a lot of your life is built out of your own neuroses, creating a pull of exactly what you don't want into the space. Now, most people on a spiritual path in the beginning vacillate back and forth, and so you'll get a lot of what you don't want, and then you'll get little hints of what you want, but it won't go all the way because it'll just get collapsed when you flip to the opposite. But the idea is to look at your life and get really honest with yourself about, you know, what really is just responding to you. You know, whatever you tell life it is, it's going to say, okay. And most of you walk around with very strong opinions about the nature of life. When you come to see how all of this works, what you come to see is that actually life has no characteristics. It really doesn't have characteristics. You just have expectations. There are expectations that you accept just as being part of a human race. We've got this collective web, and so we've got these inclinations that we're born with, and these lineages of just norms that create a pull on the web of life, that define all the boundaries and limits. But when you start awakening that power of choice, you actually get a little control over that. It's not always as much control as you want. If you're truly isolated and you don't have anyone else connected to you, then it's about as much control as you would want, And that's why a lot of hermits isolate themselves, so that they can really see the reflection of themselves clearly in the mirror of life. But we're connected to a lot of people, and those people are also pulling on life with their expectations. But we get clear, we clear our mind so that we don't have a lot of thoughts going through, so that if we look around at the manifestations, we know which ones are matching our habitual thoughts, because we're aware of ourselves. We're aware of where our shortcomings are. We're aware of the few things that we still really struggle with. So responsibility is about owning our role in that. Really looking up and accepting that a lot of this is something I made, and even the parts that I didn't make are just a few steps removed from that process by who we choose to keep in our life. People are a full set of fears and desires, independent of you in a lot of ways. And when you select them, you are selecting an entire program into your life of pulls of things into your life, things that will manifest in your life because you've selected these people. And a lot of times, that's a good thing. This is how communication happens. This is how you grow. All right, you pull people into your world, and what they do is they put reflections in your mirror that you couldn't have very easily reflected yourself without them. And so your identity starts to kind of grow and spread and expand. But all of that is you. All of that is you spreading into something else. You choosing to take something in and identify with it. When I have you just watch the mind and you go back to the top of the mountain and everything just kind of blanks out, you can kind of feel the choice in that, right? It's for a little while, nothing's wrong. Nothing's good, but nothing's bad. If you sit there long enough, there are good things that happen. But in the beginning, it really looks kind of blank for most people. If you're having a terrible day, blank is a godsend. But for a lot of people, that blank is just blank. But the ability to detach from that system of stories makes it so that when you step back in, you can kind of feel yourself reattaching to that web. And you selected how that web is arranged. Whether we like it or not. To the largest extent, we're the ones who selected that. So we're pulling things towards us in real time through what we harbor inside of ourselves. We're creating a pull. And we have people that we choose in our life. And when we choose them, we choose everything they're pulling into their life. And we can unchoose it. So there's choice. So accepting that responsibility totally is a key to freedom. It doesn't mean you have to give up anybody. It just means you're no longer a victim. Doesn't mean that the difficulties that you accept into your life aren't difficult. But, whatever. You made a choice. You're either going to stay or you're going to go. So you stay or you go. It's up to you. Mostly we choose to stay because no one difficulty is the sum of an entire person, we see more of them than that. And as we grow from them, they grow from us. So that's one piece of responsibility, accountability, culpability for the world that you're living in. Another piece of responsibility is the recognition that you are sharing this world with other people, okay? They're tapping into the same web you are. And their emotional proximity to you, not physical proximity, but emotional proximity, how closely your hearts are connected, means that if you, blow up a bomb in what you think is your area, well, you're pretty close to them and you're blowing up their area as well. So I'm about to say something, and the idea here is not to feel guilty. Okay, don't feel guilty. You're human. You're working through all of these things. All right, it's not your fault that you were put down here into this mess. You're here to get messed up and figure your way out of it, and so am I. But the teaching of responsibility actually says you really don't have the right to not be okay all the time. You really don't have the right to let yourself be a mess, to let yourself be depressed all the time, to let yourself be angry all the time. And the reason that you don't have that right is because you've got people connected to you who then are going to feel all of that. Okay? Our emotional space, it's not that big. And we all feel each other. It's the basis of communication. It's the reason talking to somebody conveys information better than sending it in a text. Because when you sit there and talk to somebody, you can actually, there's a feeling exchange that happens. You can, hear a sentence that in a text, if you're not really connected to them, might sound rude. Whereas if you can actually hear them say it and feel the energy that they are experiencing with it, you interpret it completely differently. So as humans, as sentient creatures at all, we feel each other. You can feel it when someone's really angry with you. You can feel it shaking in your body, can't you? Or sometimes to me, it'll feel just like this heat that rises straight up my spine. When I've shocked somebody in a way that is scary to them. But when they're angry, it's usually for me like a rumbling that I feel in my solar plexus. And I'm so sensitive to it, sometimes it can almost damage me a little. You actually have a responsibility to work on your craft, to really do your best to balance yourself out and move through life without taking everybody down around you. And it's a tall order, and some of you might not be fully ready to do it. But you need to know that that is what life is asking of you. That is what spiritual warriorship is. You get yourself to a point where you are not indulging in the ugliest feelings in your life. When we do EFT tapping, we will often indulge in the ugliest feelings, but we're doing it to remove the charge off of it so that we don't have to experience it anymore. That's different. You're going there for maybe 15 minutes to an hour and a half, and you are literally making it so that those feelings don't come back. But when you wake up and you're having a bad day and you don't do anything to get out of it, you need to know that you're kind of violating a rule of life. And it's a tough pill to swallow for a lot of people. But the fact is, life is going to respond to you, so you will be held accountable for it. You are responsible for it. You know, you don't know how that spreads. I mean, one person can start to feel that and they don't know that it's you they're feeling. So the first thing they start asking is, why do I feel like this? And, you know, the brain's just an answer machine. So the brain is going to say, you feel this way because you're feeling guilty, because you did something that you didn't even think you were going to feel guilty about. And that's not the truth. The truth is the brain's just providing whatever the most likely answer it can come up with. But you might end up taking action and setting cycles in motion based on that feeling that make things happen in your life. And it all started with something that had nothing to do with you. You know, you do this to other people and you don't even realize it. And whatever that does, you're accountable for it. You're responsible for it. So that's the cost of freedom, is total responsibility, total accountability, and acceptance of your culpability in everything that you manifest, everything that you choose, like what other manifestors you choose to be around, and what you allow to spread out of you into the feeling environment of your heart connections. So to walk the path of responsibility, you know, in the beginning, it's a very narrow path for a lot of people because we are so identified with our feelings, it feels like we can't be us anymore. But the truth is, that was never you. You were trapped under that. That was a cage you were living in. You are something much vaster, something that is not bound by emotion. And if you walk the path of responsibility, which becomes this very fine line path, where you take responsibility for everything and you're always holding yourself in check. If you walk that path, eventually, because you will master yourself, you will master your ability to stay in balance. That path widens into your true self, into your freedom. So that's what's meant when my teacher's teacher said that the cost of freedom is total responsibility. 100% responsibility. In shamanism, another word that they use to describe that is impeccability. But impeccability, it's one piece of impeccability. Impeccability is living what you know to be true in every moment, not living against yourself. But one of the hardest pieces of that, and the piece that most people skip when they think about impeccability, is responsibility, accountability, culpability. For your impact, your footprint in the world, your footprint in your heart connections, and the life that you've manifested around you. So that's just something I wanted to put out there tonight. And if there are any questions about that, I would love to answer them. Okay, so that's a good question. I'm going to repeat it just because I noticed last time the microphone didn't pick up other people's questions. So somebody's asking, is it like karma? So it's good things as well as bad things. And yes, absolutely. So, you know, if you are spreading positivity, then people are going to feel that. But positivity is one of those things you have to be careful with too, because positivity in a lot of ways is just the other side of the coin of negativity. The two are very closely related. And one of the biggest problems with life is that everybody is always riding a wave up into the positive and then crashing down into the negative. Because whenever you go to any extreme on one side, the law of life is you will collapse into the opposite. So you can only pull that rubber band so far. You can only push that yang so far before it becomes yin. So positivity should never be forced. It should never be an upswing. Positivity, true, I wouldn't use the word positivity. Really, I would just say that the natural state of you, when you've stopped reaching for positivity and trying to push away negativity, natural state is actually a state of comfort and ease, a state of charged comfort and ease, a dynamic peace. And when you are in that state, that is a state that is not part of that wave of life. So you actually start to find some stability. There's a feeling when that charge increases to a point where the heart opens up, and that especially happens usually when there's somebody in need in front of you because you've got the energy, the heart just opens, and what flows through is something very akin to love. That love, which is really just, again, a charged, powered peace, will absolutely be felt by that person. It will 100% be felt by that person. Now, the karma piece of that you brought up has to do with the fact that whatever that does to that person is going to be connected to you. And whatever that person does with it is connected to you. So, I'm a spiritual teacher. When my students or anybody that I have tried to help really sits down and uses what I've given them to take a step forward, I can feel it inside of me. I'll be going through my day and it's like suddenly the energy just brightens and expands. There's some piece of me because, I make a connection with people. So on some level, I feel them, and I'm almost dysfunctionally sensitive at this point, so I really do feel every little thing. If I don't, it's usually not that I don't feel it. It's that I've got so many people that I can't even parse it apart all the time. But when one of them makes a major leap from their discomfort into a place of powered peace, it is this unbelievable relief in me. And when that happens, I have more to offer, and they are accountable for that. They are responsible for that. And so, yes, there is that karmic backflow of just choosing really just to be kind to yourself and give yourself that time to actually feel good. There is an outflow and then a flow back to you because of the positive impact that has on the people in your life. And sometimes, that's as simple as a person watching you walk down the street and they just get a sense of the energy in your step. And it's just an image to them, but an image is a container for feeling, and they feel it. And it makes a small change in their day. And enough of those small changes over a period of time can make a dramatic impact on the karmic consequences of what it means to be you. So, on this particular call are, a few of the kindest people I know. So this is one of those things at your level, this is getting nitty gritty, right? But again, it's a fine line. True spiritual path, when you're really walking it, especially when you're trying to attain your initial awakening, is a very fine line. And at first it feels restrictive and narrow, but then the benefits of it kick in and it opens up into a road that is freedom. Freedom and awareness. And if you decide to suffer, it's literally just because you've decided you care enough about the world not to kick it out of your life. Not everybody makes that decision. Some people go and put themselves on some mountain retreat for the next 80 years. This week, that sounds really nice. But, most of us, when we get there, we look back and we just feel better, and we're grateful, but we look back and we see that all these people have the same potential we do, but they're suffering and they need somebody to kind of help keep dragging them forward, help keep reminding them that this is not only one of their options, but it's kind of the only option that's going to be worth choosing in a world that really has a tremendous amount of suffering in it. You will suffer because you're going to go to work and you're connected to people at work who are suffering. But what do you do with that? Do you take responsibility for it and say, okay, I am responsible for being here and I know why I'm feeling this. I'm feeling this because there's someone I've chose to have in my life that, I'm feeling this over. And I am going to respond by just seeing what I can do to help and by cleaning off my energy with meditation and just, keeping myself as clean as I can be. I get the feeling that I missed a question. Was there a question? Was someone? Yeah. Yeah. Empathy's not sympathy. All right. So that was a great question. Let me just get this recorded. So the question was, um, is it important then not to harbor opinions of other people? And when people are going through a difficult time, isn't empathy important? Empathy, for starters, is not sitting down with somebody and feeling bad for them. That's not empathy. That's sympathy. And no, honestly, you will experience empathy because that's what all humans experience. Empathy is just the ability to feel what someone else is going through. And so you understand them. The words that, were usually translated to make people think that sympathy was that spiritual quality that was being described were words like prajnana, which is a Sanskrit word that actually means understanding. So you look at a person and you understand them. In Buddhism, the word is Maitreya, which is a word that means loving kindness, but it's not sympathy. It's not sympathy at all. When someone is going through something difficult, you activate the mechanism that I'm describing by having complete faith in them. By knowing just with complete faith, complete assuredness that they have everything they need to get through this. And you can stand by them if you choose. You can stand with them and you can feel what they're feeling and just absorb it and take the pain and not let it set a cycle in motion in you. And if you do that long enough, you'll get sick. So you've got to be careful. I think the better approach is to sit with them a little while and see if they would actually like some help getting out of it. Can you can hand them some tools, you can meditate with them, you can even for a little bit give them a chance to talk it out. EFT, I think, of course, is something I'm very enthusiastic about. It's something I think would be very, very helpful for them. And you can teach it to them, but a lot of people, they don't want any of that. What they want is sympathy. They want you to wallow with them. But I know you pretty well, and I know that you have spent years wallowing with people and seeing no improvement. You know, you see improvement when you finally step back and say, I think you need to go get some help. I don't think I can help you anymore. That's when we see our friends get better. If they're not willing to take our actual advice. We don't have the right to tell people how to live. We don't have the right to tell people that they're not allowed to be upset. We don't have the right to tell them they have to be on this spiritual path that I'm describing. We can make the tools available, and if they don't want to use them, that's fine. But then, they're going to have to actually find their way out of it. But the help you can give, the best thing you can do, is whether you're in their presence or away from their presence, is have complete faith in them. And they will feel that. I have a memory of, so I spent 15 years as a massage therapist. And I remember I had a girl on the table. She was young, like 17 years old. And she, midway through every massage would just start crying. And, in the beginning, I would stop the massage, give her time to pull herself back together. And then we would go back in, and, it always meant that her massage was way longer than what she paid for. But we did this little dance for a long time, of me saying, it's okay. I'm sorry. I know this is so hard. It's okay. You're a good person. You're this, you're that, sympathy, sympathy, sympathy. We did that for probably 6 months. Nothing changed. Nothing changed. One day, I just had the realization that I am describing to you tonight. And when I got to the table, I just stopped treating her tears as something that needed to be dealt with. I mean, I didn't pretend they weren't happening. I just, from the depths of my being, said, you're okay. You're fine. You're okay. Try and relax. Open up. Open up. You're okay. And I didn't stop. I didn't change my rhythm in any way. I just kept going. And what I found was, after a period of time, after a few sessions, she stopped crying on the table. And her life started getting better in a lot of ways. And I remember talking to her about it years later. And she said, I think the major turning point was when you stopped taking my pain so seriously, it gave me permission to stop taking it so seriously. Do you see how this mechanism is at play? If I sympathize with her, I am actually responsible for magnifying the problem. I'm accountable. Whatever happens from that, it's on me. It's on her too, but it's also on me. And if I just spread confidence in her, that's on me too. And whatever good comes of it is on me too. So wherever you can just have faith in somebody, if for no other reason than because they are born in a human body, and you know that at some point, everybody eventually wakes up. If you can just carry that, you can provide a tremendous amount of comfort to people. That is more comfortable than sympathy. But those are great questions. Those are questions that tell me that you are really taking the teaching in, because those are both questions that are incredibly relevant to the teaching we're talking about. It's a rare thing in a meditation class, for what it's worth. So that says something good about you. Is there anything else? Okay. Why don't we go back into meditation for another 10 minutes or so and just really kind of let all this sink in? Just watch your breath. You don't need to bat this back and forth in your mind. This is a spiritual teaching, so it comes like a package and it's in there. All you have to do is let it take root. And again, I want to emphasize, according to this teaching, the worst thing you could do is use this to feel guilty about every time you've been less than perfect and spread something bad. Because to feel guilty is, of course, to spread something bad. Just want to make sure that's in the mix. Your past is your past. Just put your hands on the plow and move forward. Don't look back. Slow yourself down. Let it all sink in. Get out of the way. Okay, everybody. So, this week, what I would really like for you to do is make a commitment to yourself that once a day you are going to look at your life through the lens of personal responsibility. Once a day, you're going to look up and you're going to remind yourself that your choices are holding all of this in place, that people are responding to you. And remind yourself that how you feel about that and anything you're feeling is oozing out of you into your environment, positive or negative. Bring that strongly into your awareness for a certain period of time, at least once a day. You can even journal about it if you want to really kind of cement it in. You know, sometimes we spend so much time transcending the story, but a realization like that, you do have to kind of weave it in to the story of your life a little bit. That's what I think. That's why I think the mountain metaphor is such a good one. Our freedom is up at the top of that mountain, and yet, the top of that mountain is still built on the entire lower parts of the mountain. Your whole life is still there. And you still have to enter into it. So you want to find ways to kind of tie this realization into the life that you're living. First, just make sure you go there at least once a day. But then after that, find little things in your world that remind you of that teaching. Find little examples that when you see them in your story, they're going to wake you up, make you lucid in this dream of life. Any questions before we close up? Okay, guys. I'll let you get back to your night, and thank you for coming, and I will be here next week. Thank you. Thank you. Night. Thank you. Have a great night.